This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you, and welcome to this special lecture, which is one of the key events this summer, marking 50 years of Jamaica's independence from the UK. And before we start, a couple of housekeeping things. Please turn your mobile phones off. And if there is a fire alarm, I'm sure there won't be, but if there is, it's very simple. We all leave. And we leave by that exit as quickly as possible and go out through the main doors that you probably came in, into Senate House and out onto Mallet Street. That won't happen, but I just need to tell you in case it does. Welcome, as I say, to this lecture, and especially to our distinguished guests, many members of the Diplomatic Corps, our panel here, who we'll introduce in a moment. We're very pleased to have Jenny Rowe, Chief Executive of the UK Supreme Court, here with us in the audience, and I'm sure that many of you come with a wealth of experience and interest that you'll bring into the questions and answers that we can have after the lecture tonight. The title of the lecture, Monarchy, Republicanism and the Privy Council, is both timely and possibly a little provocative in this Golden Jubilee year. We're going to find out which way it goes in just a moment. But first I'd like to thank the University of London for hosting us this evening here at Senate House, and welcome the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Geoffrey Crossick, because he'd like to say a few words. Vice-Chancellor.
Thank you very much, Claire. Well, as Vice-Chancellor of the University of London, it really does give me great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to this very special event. I want to extend a special welcome to Her Excellency, the High Commissioner for Jamaica, Mrs. Elun Ndombeta Samba. I know that you're very new in town, just been here for a few weeks, which might explain why your car went round Trafalgar Square, which none of us would have chosen to do at 6:45 on a weekday evening. But I suspect it was your driver's choice rather than your own. But I welcome you most warmly, and I hope that your period in London is very successful. I also hope, of course, that it begins with some great Jamaican triumphs in the Olympics next month. I also wish to welcome, on behalf of the University, this evening's very distinguished lecturer, Judge Patrick Robinson, Jamaica's leading international lawyer and somebody of huge international distinction. Let me welcome you both to the University, and let me welcome you all in the audience to the University as well, and more specifically to the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. The Institute of Commonwealth Studies is one of 10 institutes within the University's School of Advanced Study. Each of those institutes is charged with facilitating and supporting research in its own field. Research nationally and research internationally. And more than that, each of those institutes is charged with making that research engaged and relevant beyond the universities as a whole. The Institute of Commonwealth Studies is particularly active in stimulating wider debate in its own field. This year, for example, the Institute of Commonwealth Studies organised a series of seminars throughout the year to explore the monarchy and the Commonwealth. And the Princess Royal attended the opening, who is Chancellor of the University, attended the opening ceremony and the opening seminar earlier this year. And she wound up that seminar with a memorable set of very personal recollections and reflections, which were not a member of the royal family simply going through the motions of saying polite things. It was 10 to 15 minutes of quite remarkable personal insights and reflections, which I think are typical of the Princess Royal. This evening's lecture is jointly hosted by the Jamaican High Commission and the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. And it follows the key role for any university, which is to host engaged debate and engaged thought. Jamaica's intention to become a republic got considerable publicity in the UK earlier this year when Prince Harry visited the country as part of the Diamond Jubilee celebrations. And this evening's lecture will obviously engage with that theme, a theme that is so important today for Jamaica, but also obviously for Britain and the monarchy, and that is the move of Jamaica from monarchy to republic. It would bring about, were it to happen, a new relationship with Jamaica's former colonial rulers, and there would be associated with it, in the juridical sphere, a proposed end to the Privy Council's powers. These are very important changes for Jamaica, and also very important changes for this country. I do wish so much that I could hear what is clearly going to be a very important lecture, but unfortunately I have an engagement that was made long before I knew this lecture was to take place, and long before I was given the honour of welcoming you all to it. The engagement I have to go to is one I sadly cannot miss. I wish I could not only hear the lecture itself, but also the views of Philip Murphy. Philip is the Institute of Commonwealth Studies Director. He has written on the move to Republican status by newly independent African states in the 1960s, and is about to publish a book about the British monarchy and the Commonwealth. I would love to hear his contribution to the discussion, and I'm sorry I shall miss the lecture and the discussion as a whole. But let me say once again how very pleased I am to be able to welcome you all to the university, above all to welcome the new High Commissioner and this evening's very distinguished lecturer, Judge Patrick Robinson. Thank you.
We'll do the formal introductions of our guest of honour in just a moment, but he wants to make a presentation to the Vice-Chancellor before the Vice-Chancellor has to go, so slightly out of order. We're going to ask Judge Robinson to come up here perhaps and do that so that the Vice-Chancellor can then leave.
Well, the Vice-Chancellor will not be so discourteous as to leave before the new High Commissioner has said a few words, but I shall leave after you've spoken, Your Excellency.
Vice-Chancellor, I would like to offer you this book. It's entitled Jamaican Athletics, a Model for 2012 and the World, 2012 being very significant. And it's a book that I wrote some 3 years ago. It seeks to explain the system which underpins Jamaica's success in global athletics. And don't be late for the Olympics. Watch Jamaica's outstanding performance in August.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I thank you very much. I shall, before passing it to the university, for the university library, I shall take a look at it myself. Not least so that if Jamaica does not perform as spectacularly, I can see if I can find any clues in here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. I'm not sure there are many countries that would go about celebrating their independence in the very country that used to govern them with quite as much gusto and enthusiasm as Jamaica is doing here in Britain this summer. But of course the relationship between Jamaica and the UK is exceptional and unusual and very, very deep, and that's not least because of the vast number of Jamaicans and people of Jamaican descent who live in this country. I think we're now in the 4th generation of the Jamaican diaspora here in the UK. It's one of the biggest Jamaican communities there is anywhere outside your own country. And it is, of course, a community that's made an incredible contribution to Britain. So there are going to be celebrations here, a lot of celebrations, many different types, lectures like this, exhibitions, parties, cricket, of course. Much of that organised by the Jamaican High Commission in London. So without further ado, let's hand you over to the High Commissioner, Mrs. Alun Dombete-Samba.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Vice-Chancellor of the University of London, our special guest lecturer this evening, Deputy High Commissioner, colleague, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished persons all, it is my pleasure to welcome you here this evening and to say thank you very much for coming. Sir, I had nothing to do with the route. I simply sat and allowed the people who know the city much more than I do to take me here. But it's a very great pleasure to be here and to welcome all of you to the second in a series of lectures which we have in celebration of our 50th anniversary of independence. The third lecture is going to be on October 18, 2012, and it is called the Sam Sharp Lecture. Now, Sam Sharp is one of our national heroes, and that will take place at Canterbury Christ Church University. No? There's a change? Oh, I'm so sorry. It's going to, please forgive me. It's going to take place at the High Commission, but it's being given by Reverend Dr. Robert Bedford, who is the reader in theology at the Canterbury Christ Church University. And I invite you all to come. Now, this evening we're very pleased to have as our lecturer His Excellency Judge Patrick Robinson, and he'll be introduced to you further. But you did hear that we're having a lot of events to celebrate our independence. And as the evening goes on, and I'm sure that when the Deputy High Commissioner comes to tell you thanks, that she will tell you about some of these events. For the moment, you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Justice Patrick Robinson. So I just really want to say thank you all for coming, and I know this is going to be very enlightening. We're in Jamaica now discussing the way forward. And what I discovered on Saturday when I spoke at our Diaspora Day event is that people are just yearning for information to change some perceptions that probably exist, to be able to pick sense out of some of the nonsense that have been said, or simply to just understand the issues that we need to be dealing with as a country as we make our decision to go forward towards full independence. And so I really thank you all for coming, and I know we are going to have a very enlightened evening. Thank you.
Well, now we come to our guest speaker this evening, and we're honoured to be hearing from one of the world's leading international lawyers. Judge Patrick Robinson's distinguished career in public service includes time spent as an English teacher, and then 3 decades working for and with the Jamaican government in various positions, including as a Crown Counsel, a legal advisor, Senior Assistant Attorney General, and Deputy Solicitor General. He represented Jamaica on important United Nations bodies and has been a member of many other international panels. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the Haiti Truth and Justice Commission are just 2 examples. And I'm not going to go into the whole list because it is very, very long, as is his list of academic awards and various other awards that he's been given during his distinguished career. More recently, though, Patrick Robinson has served as a judge at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and as its president, an achievement of no mean order is how a commentator described it in a Jamaican newspaper column that I read. And the same commentator described the judge as a personable and statuesque individual, a Jamaican who quietly and unassumingly ascended through the legal ranks. So he's clearly highly respected in Jamaica and far beyond. But from some past speeches and comments that I've read, I'm not sure the judge is going to be quiet or unassuming today as he talks about Jamaica's constitutional and legal future, a crucial and extremely interesting topic. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Judge Patrick Robinson.
I begin by recognizing Professor Jeffrey Crossing, even though he's absent, Vice Chancellor of the University of London, Her Excellency Mrs. Saluna Samba, Jamaica's High Commissioner, other members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen, a disadvantage for me in giving so many addresses, either at the University of London or one of its colleges, is repetition. And those of you who heard my lecture at the London School of Economics in October last year would have heard me commence by acknowledging the indebtedness of the entire Commonwealth Caribbean to the University of London for the seminal role that it played in fathering, or if you wish, mothering, the establishment of the University College of the West Indies, which, as we all know, went on to produce so many distinguished persons in the Caribbean, persons who have positions of leadership within the Caribbean. I myself believe that, in a certain sense, my very profession can be traced back to the University of London. In 1966, when I was applying to enroll at the Middle Temple to do law, and I looked at the paper they sent me, I saw that the fee was a princely £180. I didn't even have 50. But when I read the document a little closer, just beside the sentence identifying the fee, there was an asterisk. And this is a lesson for you. You must always follow the asterisk. I looked at the asterisk, and what it said was, if you are a member of any of the following universities, you may apply for an exemption of £100. Well, what do you know? The University of London was there. And so I promptly sent in my degree, UCII London, and I got the exemption. Without that, I would not have been able to enter that Inn of Court. So not a single ill word will I hear about the University of London. Ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed honored to have been asked to address you this evening. And I thank the High Commission of Jamaica for giving me the opportunity, and the University of London for providing this venue. A journalist writing in the Australian recently said, if you don't want to be a Jamaican now, you will be by the time the Olympics is over. But I know that you cannot wait to become Jamaicans. After all, there is a cachet attached to being Jamaican that goes far beyond the running track. It is not every country that can claim that its name has given birth to a new word in the English language. And if you are not already privy to it, let me tell you that in the next edition of any reputable English dictionary, you will see the word Jamaicanly, Jamaicanly, ADV, adverb, and then listen to the meaning. Define the odds with style, flair, and aplomb in such a manner as would normally be deemed incredible or impossible. If the word is not there, you have my authority to toss the dictionary through the window. It is not reputable. Of course, one does not have to be a Jamaican to conduct oneself Jamaicanly. And I know the British will shortly be claiming that they always conduct themselves Jamaicanly. But to act Jamaicanly, it certainly helps if you are Jamaican. And so your impatience is understandable, and you will not have to wait for another 2 months. In a preemptive strike, for the purposes of our conversation this evening, and inspired by this season of jubilees, I hereby grant all non-Jamaicans present Jamaican citizenship. One for the Guinness Book of World Records as the speediest process by which a person has become a citizen of another country and at no cost. And when I address you as my fellow Jamaicans, I might not be that far off anyway, given the long historic ties between our two countries. And so, my fellow Jamaicans, let us talk honestly about the relationship between the United Kingdom and Jamaica. A relationship that is grounded in a history familiar to all who have had a colonial past or who continue to exist in a colony-metropole relationship. Jamaica's had a constitutional relationship with the United Kingdom for 357 years. And tonight, I'd like to consider whether the time has not come for Jamaica to sever the last two constitutional ties with the United Kingdom and exercise the plenitude of sovereignty and independence in the conduct of all its affairs. And Jamaica is not the only nation wrestling with these questions right now, as witness the debate in the land of one of my ancestors in the north of this country. Later on, I will have occasion to speak of my other ancestors from the vast continent to the south. But first, a word or two about the historical context in which questions relating to the monarchy, republicanism, and the Privy Council arise in Jamaica. Jamaica's relationship with England started in the period of republicanism that lasted in England for 11 years in the middle of the 17th century. In the English Civil War, the Roundheads defeated the Royalists. King Charles I was beheaded, and the Republican Commonwealth and Protectorate commenced in 1649. Oliver Cromwell, a leading figure in the Republican movement that overthrew the Stuart monarchy, became head of state with the title Lord Protector. And he ruled England from 1653 to 1658. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, it was lex talionis, as Cromwell's body was disinterred by the Royalists and his head removed. In 1655, Cromwell sent Admiral Penn and General Venables to take Hispaniola, now Haiti and Santo Domingo, from the Spanish. They failed, but not wishing to disappoint Cromwell by returning empty-handed, they proceeded to nearby Jamaica, which was not well protected, and captured it from the Spanish, who had occupied the island from 1509. The Spanish imported people captured, enslaved, and shipped from Africa to replace the native Taínos, who were decimated by Spanish brutality and diseases. The English continued the slave trade to acquire labor mainly for their prosperous sugar plantations. In 1774, the average white person in Jamaica was 52.3 times as wealthy as the average white person in England and Wales. Born in bloodshed and sustained in bloodshed, the relationship between England and Jamaica was marked by atrocity upon atrocity against the enslaved. but they did not meekly accept their lot. There were many acts of resistance. In fact, there were more enslaved-led resistance wars in Jamaica than in any other British colonial territory in that period, including the United States of America. Additionally, the English had to contend with the Maroons, Africans who refused to be enslaved and fought the English from 1655 to 1739, when the English were forced to sue for peace and enter into a treaty granting them lands and some autonomy. Fellow Jamaicans, Sam Sharp's Emancipation War of 1831, in which over 500 slaves were killed, the Morant Bay Rebellion of 1865, in which over 400 persons were killed, and the labor protests of 1938, in which 15 persons were killed, are the seminal events that stoked the furnace in which Jamaica's independence was forged. Indeed, it was the 1831 Emancipation War that more than any other event led to the abolition of slavery in 1834 and full emancipation in 1838. Although others assisted, notably the Baptist clergy in Jamaica and the abolitionists in England, emancipation from slavery was achieved by the struggle and the courage of the enslaved men and women themselves. While the English gave the Caribbean enslavers £20 million as compensation for their loss, the newly freed people were given nothing and for the most part left to fend for themselves. After slavery, Chinese and Indians were brought in as indentured laborers. The system of indentureship and post-emancipation employment and subsistence living produced their own horrors for the workers. Jamaica received adult suffrage in 1944. In 1955, Jamaica was granted internal self-government. In 1957, Jamaica became part of the short-lived West Indies Federation, which was dissolved in 1962. On the 6th of August, 1962, Jamaica became an independent country with the Queen as the head of Parliament and the executive. But the Queen herself has no substantive role in the government of Jamaica, where she is represented by the Governor General. Therefore, in one form or another, Jamaica has had a monarchical system of government from 1660 to the present time. Today, Jamaica has a population of 2.7 million people, of which more than 95% are descendants of the former enslaved. In 1833, the Privy Council was established to hear appeals from the plantations and colonies. The Privy Council was, of course, the final appellate body, not only for colonial Jamaica, but for dominions in the Commonwealth. However, today, the vast majority of Commonwealth countries have severed ties with the Privy Council, leaving a paltry few, regrettably, including Jamaica, with that court as their final appellate body. My thesis is that the monarchy in Jamaica should be replaced by a republican form of government, and appeals to the Privy Council should be replaced by appeals to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And fellow Jamaicans, when we shall have achieved these epochal milestones, let us be clear about the event that was their trigger. The struggle for freedom and independence did not begin in 1962, when we attained independence. Nor did it begin in 1955 on the grant of internal self-government. And it did not begin with the labor protests of 1938, nor with the Morant Bay Rebellion of 1865, nor with full emancipation in 1838, nor with Sam Sharp's Emancipation War of 1831, or not even with the first big recorded revolt of the enslaved in 1684. No, fellow Jamaicans, it did not begin with any of those events, significant though each one was on the long journey to freedom and independence. That struggle started with the first cry for freedom by our oppressed ancestors from the south across the Atlantic. That first cry was not uttered in Jamaica. It was made on abduction in West Africa. If not there, then in the so-called slave castles of Ghana and Senegal. And if not there, then certainly in the notorious Middle Passage. That cry could still be heard in 1684 after the first activist war. In 1831, after Sam Sharp's Emancipation War. In 1838, after full emancipation. In 1865, after the Morant Bay Rebellion. In 1938, after the labor protests. In 1955, after internal self-government. And even in 1962, after independence. And fellow Jamaicans, it is a cry for freedom that will not go away and die. It is a cry that will haunt us until we seize the plenitude of sovereignty and independence available to us by replacing the monarchy with a republic and the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Justice. Let us not be diverted by those who, in advancing the facile argument that relinquishing these two symbols can't put food on the table, say that there are more important social and economic issues to which Jamaica must attend. For the replacement of these ancient symbols is an issue that goes to the identity and self-image of Jamaicans, and as such is anterior to and transcends all other issues. Indeed, it is the basic, the fundamental issue in Jamaican society. And may I say, we are not in an either-or situation. It is entirely wrong to suggest that Jamaicans cannot take the steps to relinquish these two symbols and at the same time adopt the measures necessary for their social and economic advancement. And so the impetus to relinquish and replace the monarchy and the Privy Council is properly located in our ancestors' primordial cry for freedom. Without their determination and their sacrifice, Jamaicans would not enjoy even an iota of the freedom that today we take for granted. It is to be regretted that so many of my countrymen and women do not wish to have a conversation about our history and do not wish to be reminded that they are descended from African slaves. National hero Norman Manley, himself a product of the finest education available in the colonies and in England, had no such fears or inhibitions. He readily acknowledged springing from the black masses and knew who his ancestors were. Fellow Jamaicans, a monarchical system of government is one in which the head of state inherits power. Birth is the criterion for assuming a position in governance. A monarchical system of government is inherently undemocratic, since the will of the people has no influence on the process by which the monarch, as head of state, is appointed. I concede readily that some monarchies have, over time, become very popular with their subjects and enjoy widespread support. For the popularity of this monarch, we need look no further than the ardent public participation in the celebration of the Queen's Jubilee earlier this month. Indeed, many Jamaicans also admire the Queen. However, let us separate the two issues and admit that in an age where so much stress has been placed after the Second World War on democratic values as the best guarantee for good governance, a monarchical system would not qualify as the model to follow in modern statehood. Apart from the principled objection to a monarchical system of government, there is another reason why the present monarchical system is inappropriate for Jamaica. Jamaica is a post-oppression society, and its people should not be asked to have as its head of state a person who symbolizes the oppression inflicted on their enslaved and other ancestors. By far the worst relic of enslavement, indentureship, and colonialism is that they have left Jamaicans with a muddled sense of their identity. Colonization has left ingrained in the psyche of Jamaicans the feeling that they are not good enough, that what they look like is not good enough, and that what is foreign, especially if it is white, English, European, or American, is better. Don't underestimate the importance of symbols, especially in a country with a history like Jamaica's, and one as young as Jamaica is. Fellow Jamaicans, in Jamaica, the symbols at the apex of the political and the judicial systems are all wrong. The monarchy and the Privy Council, comprised of foreigners, ignorant of Jamaican culture, living thousands of miles away, many of whom have never set foot in Jamaica, and who have precious little in common with the Jamaican people, are an anachronism that Jamaicans should not be asked to endure any longer. My own submission is this: it is no more acceptable for a foreigner, or if you prefer, a non-citizen of Jamaica, to be the head of state of Jamaica than it would be today for the head of state of France or the head of state of Germany to be the head of state of the United Kingdom. In fact, the situation in which a foreigner and the symbol of the oppression of our ancestors is the sovereign head of state of Jamaica would be deliriously risible were it not so tragic. Certainly, countries such as the United States of America, France, Germany, Israel, and the United Kingdom itself would not in this day and age tolerate a parallel situation. Why then, 50 years after independence, do Jamaicans? While I acknowledge that the monarchical system has worked well for the people of the United Kingdom, the monarchy is plainly inappropriate for and irrelevant to Jamaica, and its retention is a clear affront to our enslaved and other ancestors. Now, Jamaica should have a productive relationship with the United Kingdom, and Jamaica can have such a relationship with the United Kingdom. I note that more than 500,000 Jamaicans and their descendants make this country their home, but the relationship should not be one in which the British monarch is Jamaica's head of state. When Jamaica becomes a republic, it would, like its Caribbean sisters, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana and Dominica, remain within the Commonwealth. As a republic within the Commonwealth, Jamaica and the United Kingdom will continue to develop their relationship for their mutual benefit. The benefit usually associated with the monarchy is the perceived stability and certainty that it is said to provide. The monarchy remains while governments change. It is not clear to me that if Jamaica has enjoyed political stability in the last 50 years, and a fair comment must be that it has, that this can be attributed to the British monarchy. And there is no reason to believe that the current level of political stability in Jamaica would not continue under a republican system of government. The Prime Minister of Jamaica has indicated that the time has come to move Jamaica to republican status. For that to be achieved, in addition to the observance of other provisions, the Jamaican Constitution requires a 2/3 majority of both houses of Parliament approving the relevant law and an affirmative outcome of a referendum. Fellow Jamaicans, the time has also come to relinquish ties with the Privy Council. There are some in Jamaica who oppose such a move. The explanation for this opposition is the feeling that we are not good enough and cannot be depended on to be just and fair and deliver justice in the way that an English court can. The modern media, particularly television and film, contributes to the negative image that Jamaicans have of themselves. And our own misdeeds help to explain the lack of confidence Jamaicans have in their institutions. But in my submission, by far the most potent explanation of the mistrust of and lack of confidence in each other is the 307-year colonial experience. Fellow Jamaicans, if it were true that Jamaica is a nation of incompetence and dullards, then anyone who proclaimed the stellar achievements of Jamaicans like Marcus Garvey, Norman Manley, T.P. Lecky, Una Morrison, Mary Seacole, and Bob Marley would be guilty of a scandalous falsehood. Today, the achievements of our athletes at the global level give the lie to the claim that we can't think, we can't plan, we can't manage to the highest international standards. For if you're unsure of many things, of this one thing you can be sure. What we have achieved in global athletics is not an accident. It is rather the result of a system that has been patiently developed, tried and tested over the past 100 years. A system of athletic instruction, management, and administration that is now well established. Yes, Jamaica has the natural talent, but so do others. Without the system to harness that talent, Jamaica would not be the success story it is in international track and field. Fellow Jamaicans, the self-reliance and the indigenization that have catapulted our athletes to the top of the world can be relied on to propel our judiciary to the same level of achievement. If Jamaica is independent in sports, in music, in education, and in every other facet of national life, including its legislative and executive functions, why shouldn't Jamaica also be independent in its judicial function? Jamaica and the Caribbean have always produced lawyers of the highest caliber. Norman Manley of Jamaica is an example, and so too Hugh Wooding of Trinidad and Tobago. It wasn't surprising, therefore, that the Federal Court of Appeal, in existence for 5 years from 1957 to 1962, functioned at the highest level of professionalism, producing judgments of the highest quality. The lawyers and judges in Jamaica are well equipped to serve in a final appellate body. In the research done, the discovery that would perhaps most startle those who berate Jamaican judges is something I have instinctively known all along. It is this: in terms of reversals of their decisions, Jamaican judges compare favorably to their United Kingdom counterparts. The percentage of appeals allowed by the Privy Council from decisions of the Jamaican Court of Appeal is roughly the same as it is for appeals allowed by the House of Lords, recently replaced by the UK Supreme Court. from decisions of the UK Court of Appeal, and that is between 30 and 40%. Jamaican judges would therefore seem to be as good, or if you wish, as bad, as the United Kingdom judges. And the comparison is very apt, since the Privy Council is comprised of judges drawn from the UK Supreme Court, formerly the Law Lords in the House of Lords. But listen to this, the Privy Council is not accessible to the vast majority of Jamaicans. The right to appeal to the Privy Council is illusory, since Jamaicans cannot afford the 5,000 miles trek for justice. Consequently, only a few persons utilize that court. In effect, only those who are relatively well off and those accused of murder who receive pro bono help from English lawyers, a situation that has prompted one commentator to say, "It is only the wealthy and the wicked who go to the Privy Council." There's another cogent reason for leaving the Privy Council. Like the tardy guest, Jamaica has overstayed its welcome. It is clear that Jamaica and the other countries still tied to the Privy Council are not wanted, and if they had any pride and self-respect, they would leave. In 2009, Lord Phillips, President of the UK Supreme Court, complained that his judges had to spend too much time on cases from the Commonwealth, 40% of their working hours. He said that Caribbean countries should utilize the Caribbean Court of Justice, and that in an ideal world, former Commonwealth countries would stop using the Privy Council and set up their own final courts of appeal. Those of you from Jamaica, you see how we've allowed people to take step with us. After that classic put down, you would have to wonder why any self-respecting Caribbean country, why any country with ancestors such as national hero Marcus Garvey, who preached self-reliance for the upliftment of the black race, would not have immediately set in motion the process to sever ties with the Privy Council and have its own final appellate body. For Garvey was right when he said, "It is far better to be free to govern or misgovern yourself than to be governed by anyone else." But let me say a little about the court I've identified to replace the Privy Council. The Caribbean Court of Justice was established by an agreement between countries in the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, in 2001. The Caribbean Court has two jurisdictions. In its original jurisdiction, it hears cases that arise from the interpretation and application of the CARICOM Treaty. These are mainly trade disputes. The original jurisdiction binds all CARICOM states. In its appellate jurisdiction, and this is the jurisdiction that would replace the Privy Council, it hears appeals from decisions of the Courts of Appeal of CARICOM states. And the agreement allows a state to enter a reservation in respect of this jurisdiction, which, as I said, will replace appeals to the Privy Council. So far, Barbados, Guyana, and Belize, the last in 2010, have accepted the Caribbean Court's appellate jurisdiction. Bearing in mind that until 2010, there were only two countries that had accepted the CCJ's appellate jurisdiction, one would have to say that it has done very well in terms of the number of applications and cases heard. There have been 43 applications, of which 40 have been determined, and 47 appeals filed, of which 41 have been determined. In its original jurisdiction, there have been 7 applications for special leave to appeal and 4 originating applications. Compared to those figures, the European Court of Human Rights only heard 10 cases in its first 10 years, but it now has over 130,000 cases filed. All new courts take time to build a volume of work. My own tribunal was established in 1993, but did not hear its first case until 1995. But fellow Jamaicans, you will ask, why a Caribbean court and not a Jamaican court as our final appellate body? There is no denying that Jamaica shares with CARICOM members a common history of colonialism, slavery struggle, freedom and independence. And that common history makes them part of us and us part of them. Moreover, the path to the Caribbean Court of Justice and the Caribbean jurisprudence has been prepared by the common legal training provided to Caribbean students over the past 40 years under the auspices of the Council of Legal Education. This training is superior to the training received by Jamaicans who studied in England. It is a training that has produced lawyers of the highest quality and eminent judges, many of whom have become Chief Justices of their countries. Fellow Jamaicans, as good as a final Jamaican appellate body would be, a final appellate body with judges from our sister Caribbean countries and Jamaica would, by reason of the deeper pool to draw from, be better and stronger and better serve Jamaica's national interest. The law to replace the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court must be passed by a 2/3 majority of both houses of Parliament. That's the House of Representatives and the Senate. Fellow Jamaicans, in this Jamaica's 50th year of independence, the best gift to Jamaica would be a categoric and unequivocal decision to sever ties with those two symbols that are inappropriate for and irrelevant to the country. The replacement of the monarchy with a republican system of government, ironically, the system that prevailed in England in the first period of its relationship with that country, and the replacement of the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Justice. In adopting those measures, we will be following the example of another island state. Singapore was a colony of the United Kingdom for about a century and a half, became an independent republic within the Commonwealth in 1965, and abolished all appeals to the Privy Council in 1994. Fellow Jamaicans, republican status is the natural and logical culmination of the process that began with the first cry for freedom by our oppressed ancestors and was continued by their full emancipation in 1838 and the attainment of independence in 1962. Replacing the two symbols is about acknowledging the struggle of our ancestors. Taki and Nani of the Maroons, Sam Sharp and Eliza Whittingham, Paul Bogle, Elizabeth Taylor, not the one you're thinking of, and George William Gordon, Marcus Garvey, Aggie Bernard, St. William Grant, Alexander Bustamante, and Norman Manley. We say to them, you did not struggle in vain. It will be the final vindication of their struggle. Fail to relinquish and replace those ties, and we fail them. Not to grasp the plenitude of sovereignty and independence available to us would be an abnegation and a grave betrayal of their hopes and aspirations. But, fellow Jamaicans, even as it is right that we recognize and acknowledge the struggle of our ancestors, it is imperative that we should not allow ourselves to be weighed down by our history. We should be buoyed by the courage of our ancestors and use their spirit to transport us to greater heights of achievement. Relinquishing and replacing the ties is also about saying to our ancestors, we are ready and able to complete the journey you started centuries ago. To borrow the wonderfully expressive phrase from the Jamaican language used by Prime Minister Portia Simpson, time come. Fellow Jamaicans, when we relinquish and replace those symbols, we do so not only for the sake of our ancestors, we do so also for ourselves and for future generations. For it inures to our benefit to take this action. It is in the best interest of Jamaica. But symbols are not an end in themselves. They are only a vehicle to take us where we want to go. Jamaicans must make Jamaica work. Our enslaved and other ancestors initiated the process that led to political independence. They would want us to achieve economic independence, or as much of that as is attainable in our interrelated and globalized world. Mindful of Norman Manley's charge to this generation to reconstruct the social and economic society and life of Jamaica, the best way to memorialize and celebrate the struggle of our ancestors, who, make no mistake about it, are responsible for the freedom and independence we have today, is for Jamaicans to work hard to ensure that our country experiences real growth and development. Time comes for that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Patrick Robinson, for that fascinating and passionate argument for, I think, what we recognise is fundamental constitutional change in Jamaica. And I think we heard there a really comprehensive overview of the history of Jamaica and its 357-year relationship, I think it was, with Britain. And you talked of the roots of the changes that you want to see in the relationship now, the end of the monarchy as the head of state, the end of the Privy Council as the final court of appeal, as those roots lying in slavery and in Africa hundreds of years ago. And I think in the process made it clear that this is not just a practical matter for Jamaica as it goes on into the future, but a very profound one of Jamaican identity. So thank you very much for that. We have time now for questions.
Yes, sir.
To the judge. I would ask you, because we have a microphone here, but I don't see one out there, so you will have to speak loudly and clearly, and please identify yourselves. It's very helpful if you do that. And to keep your questions as questions. I know there will be some strong opinions here. We've just heard a strong opinion, and I'm sure there are others similar and perhaps on the opposite side as well. But if we could keep it focused on questions, there'll be more time to get those questions in, and all of you will be able to put your points to the judge. Judge Robinson, I wonder if you'd like to come and stand here in order to answer the questions, or if you'd be more comfortable sitting there, but then you will have to shout. It's up to you.
I'd be more comfortable sitting, but I recognize that my voice may not carry.
Well, let's try it and see what happens.
Yes, yes.
I'm not sure that we can... where's Olga? Can I move the microphone? Let's see.
Well, if the judge is going to sit there, perhaps the speaker could come and ask questions from that.
Here we go. Trouble is there. Yeah, it's taped. No, that's
I'll stand.
Yeah, do that.
Here we go.
Yes, sir.
Well, are we going to take them in groups, or am I to answer them singly? Okay.
Let's start with the lady over there.
Linda Hudson. My question is, would a referendum not be the way to give the Jamaican people, not just us, but at large, ownership of this constitutional move?
Did everyone hear that? Would a referendum not be the best way to go?
Well, let us distinguish between the situations in which a referendum is required by law and one in which it is not. As I indicated, for the change to a republic, a referendum is required by the Constitution. So there's no question about that. With regard to the Caribbean Court of Justice, a referendum is not required as a matter of law, although it has been mooted in some quarters.
Philip Murphy, Director of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. I'd just like to begin by thanking the judge for an incredibly eloquent speech and thanking the High Commission for sponsoring this event. We're very pleased to host it. The judge gave a history lesson. I'd like to invoke some history. 1959, Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister of Tropical Africa's first British colony to become independent, declared that his country was going to become a republic, and it became a republic in 1960. 1962, Julius Nyerere made his country a republic just a few months after becoming independent. So my question to you is, why is it taking you so long?
That's a very good question. You'd have to ask the Jamaican people that. and since I've co-opted all of you as Jamaicans, these are the people to answer. But seriously, the question is an important one. And I think it goes back to the way we have been socialized in Jamaica and in the Caribbean by the colonial experience to accept what it is that Britain has provided in the Constitution. The feeling that what is set out in the Constitution is the best model to follow. And even now, opinions are divided in Jamaica on this very question. But yes, you are right, it is in the hands of the Jamaican people to decide this question. Yeah. I've told you where my heart lies.
Thank you. Could we just welcome the ambassador to England as well as your Honor? We've written to you because we believe this question is more than could be answered straight away, and the deputy ambassador has got the letter, so perhaps you would give us a written answer. I think you made a biased presentation, Your Honor. You made a distinction between the British Crown and the Jamaican presidency, but the golden words, the words of Mr. Golding when he first raised it up 2 years ago, was it, if I was to have a queen, it must be a Jamaican queen. He didn't mention republic. You haven't raised the question of a Jamaican head of state being a king or a queen or a president, which must be on the paper. It's a question between a Jamaican royalty or a Jamaican presidency. It's not just a hell-bent rush to a presidency. Could you just confirm, Your Honor, since you have experience, that Jamaica's Constitution Day is 23rd of July and not 6th of August, as the politicians would have us believe?
But I didn't raise the question of a Jamaican queen because I don't think it arises at all. You know? I don't think Jamaicans are interested in having a Jamaican queen.
Why not?
What we want is to move away from the monarchical system. We're not interested in having a Jamaican king or queen.
Why not?
Because we have had enough of monarchies.
You are the from small Jamaica, which is Brixton.
Just a minute. I went to Brixton this morning to have my hair cut. But I didn't see you. Where were you?
My dear sir, I was here. Now, my question is, for the poor people in Jamaica, and the crown and the queen, now, when that is moved away, what happened to the poor people? Imagine that a Republican, and when the crown land in Jamaica, when you remove that, what is happening to the crown land is there. The politicians would be bribed with money, and that land disappears. So I think the issue is we must educate people what is a republic, because if you say to somebody, what is British? They can't answer you, they always fumble. British, the Queen still is MBE, member of the British Empire. It isn't there no more. England, Scotland, and Wales set up a treaty. And that's what is happening today. So when you, later on, you ask people now, what is a republic? People don't even begin to understand. So you are educated up there. you will understand that my question
is your question about what a Republican is?
What will happen with the crown land, which we don't know how much of it is there? What is going to happen with all those have to relate to people before we can change?
So you want an explanation really about what
Yes,
a Republic
people have to be educated.
and what will happen to Crown
Yes,
land?
we want to know that. It could be one of the greatest distinctions, but do it this way. And Marcus Garvey, Buster Man, and everybody.
All right, let the judge answer.
There's one part of the question that I support is really the need for public education, and I believe that is being looked into very, very seriously. There will have to be a program of very strenuous program of public education leading to a decision on the question of moving from the monarchy to the republic. I don't quite understand the question about the crown lands. The crown lands. The crown lands. I don't think they'll be in any different state, different condition from the condition that they are now in. There will be no greater danger to them or to poor people by becoming a republic. You know?
Hello, Judge Robinson. My name is Danielle Johnson.
Speak up.
My name is Danielle Johnson. I am a first-year law student, and so forgive me, my knowledge is limited to that of a first-year student. But as I think about your proposal, my question is the implications for precedent. If the Caribbean Court of Justice is deciding a case that is a similar subject area to one that's been decided by the Privy Council, do you consider that it should be guided by the Privy Council, or does there also need to be severance there?
Well, I mean, that's a very bright question for a first-year law student. And would you believe that that question has already been decided by the Caribbean Court of Justice in the first big constitutional case to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice? It's a case from Barbados on the death penalty. The Caribbean Court of Justice said it was obliged to follow decisions of the Privy Council. I do not agree with that. Because in my view, a Caribbean Court of Justice must be free to determine what the law is. So the answer to your question is that the Caribbean Court of Justice has already decided in its first big constitutional case that it is bound by decisions of the Privy Council. I personally do not support it. I would follow the via media by Singapore. I told you Singapore abolished appeals to the Privy Council in 1994, and what they decided was that they would follow decisions of the Privy Council, but not in every single case. You can't follow something slavishly and do justice. They decided they would follow the decisions of the Privy Council, except in cases where it would be patently unjust to do so. And I would encourage the Caribbean Court to adopt a similar via media approach.
This is the gentleman right in the middle. Yeah, no, you said, yeah.
Thanks very much for your presentation. It was quite enlightening. Got a couple of questions. One is, how will the president be elected or selected or appointed? And the other question is at the moment, we know that the Queen and the Governor General is really, if you like, a figurehead, mainly for ceremonial purposes, etc. Will the new president have any political power, or this will just be an appointment by the government?
Just to recap, because I'm not sure if everyone heard those questions, which I think are extremely important questions. It's all very well saying you don't want the monarch anymore, but what would a new presidency look like? How would the president be elected or selected or appointed, you said, and what would their powers be?
Well, I can't answer the question because those are the very questions that the two parties will have to determine. Yes, of course, it's a very important issue.
whether the presidency will be an executive type presidency, as in the United States, or whether the presidency will be wholly formal and ceremonial. And I did have in an earlier draft of the speech the observation that both political parties are agreed on moving to a Republican form of government, but that they were divided on precisely the question which you have asked. But I had to take it out because recently we heard from the leader of the opposition, who seemed to be saying no to the whole question of going republic. So I didn't feel it would have been accurate for me to still say that both parties are divided on Republican form of government. But the question you raised is very, very important, and it goes to the essence of the kind of Republican status. Unfortunately, I can't give you the answer. I can tell you what I would favor.
And we will continue with a few questions. We won't continue for too long because I think people will want to get to the refreshments, and of course you will have the chance to continue talking to each other and to Judge Robinson at that stage as well. A lot of you have been asking if you can get copies of his speech this evening, and the High Commission has kindly said that they will put the speech onto their website. So if you look up the Jamaican High Commission, it will be there, and then you can download it from there. And so without further ado, let's go back to questions. And actually this gentleman, I'm not sure if I should call on you again though, because if I'm the goldmouth, I don't know what you are.
I was going to say to the judge, people have been trying to silence me for a long, long time. They've never tried this one before. My name is Carl Booth, and I'm the chair of the People's National Party UK. And my question is the timeline. The gentleman is gone now asked the question, what take us so long? And our Prime Minister said the time is now, the time is right. So time comes. The timeline. Now, on political lines, I'm sure that 2/3 majority is achievable in both houses. However, the referendum may be something else. What's the timeline for a referendum? And will the houses in the House follow the referendum, or is it likely to come before the referendum?
Yeah, the procedures are very intricate. I mean, you will read them and find that after the first reading you don't understand them. But that is how law is in many cases. What I can tell you for certainty is that the referendum is the last in that process. The bill for the change has to be made, and it has to 3 months have to pass before it's debated, and then another 3 months before the vote is taken. So it's quite intricate and complicated. But the referendum would be the final phase.
Is it possible to take place during this parliament?
No, this parliament.
This parliament. 4 years.
You mean this particular? I'm sorry.
No. I think I would defer to
this parliament. You mean this particular term?
Yes.
The particular term of his government? Yes, it is possible. I thought you meant this parliamentary year, which finishes in March of next year. It is possible.
What can I say? You said the 2/3. You can get it in both houses. I don't think it's easy. The present government has a 2/3 majority in the lower house, the House of Representatives. But you also need a 2/3 majority in the Senate. And the way the Constitution is structured, it's not possible to get it without getting one person from the opposition supporting it, because there are 8 opposition senators and 13 government senators. So to get 2/3, you need 14. So the governing party would need to have at least one. No, having at least one, in effect, really means really getting all. So I don't think it's as easy as you might think.
What would be your choice or type of president? You said you had a choice. You had a
No, I favor the executive type presidency.
Which is, can you just explain that?
It's a presidency in which the president has executive functions, has real functions. He's not functioning in a formal ceremonial way. In that system, you would have the president, formal ceremonial, and then I imagine the prime minister would be the person with the effective powers. You know?
So it's really just ceremonial, effect like the duties the Governor General carries out at the moment.
Quite likely, yes, yes.
Lady here.
Pleasant afternoon, everyone. I'm Nadine and I'm one of your Commonwealth scholars this year. I'm just looking around the room and I'm not seeing a lot of younger faces. But my question is really, this is an important part of that will affect my future and most of the younger generations, the roles. We're slowly going to inherit that. What are some of the strategies that the advocacy group is taking to engage the younger generation Jamaicans who are here in the UK and closer to us?
Did everyone hear that? What are the strategies that people are taking to engage the younger generation who are going to be most affected by these decisions?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the person to answer that. Remember that I'm a judge and I have a position on the issue. I'm not a politician, you know. And although, of course, I have my own views. So I can't tell you what government policy is or what the government will do. I don't know whether the High Commissioner would want to say anything about that.
Well, you know, it's funny that you asked that, but this is the second discussion that we're having on this issue in less than a week. Because on Saturday at the Diaspora Conference, the main presentation which I made was on this issue. And I think there were a lot of young people there. As Justice Robinson said earlier on, there's going to have to be public education on this matter before it can be taken to a referendum.
Can I congratulate you on your bravery for looking around the room and say you don't see many younger persons like yourself? Some will take objection to that.
There's a lady right at the back there.
I'm a pastor and I'm a lawyer and judge here. And saying I think we have to look at both sides of the argument. And I think in terms of abolishing the monarchy, I think the arguments to me are clear. What I'm interested in, though, is those who think the monarchy should be retained as head of state. What are their arguments?
Well, I think it would be best to direct that to them. But I did point to one argument which you hear all the while, that is, the monarchy is perceived as providing certainty and stability, that while governments change, the monarch remains. I personally don't see any merit in that.
Sorry, just to answer that, some figures that I found earlier today, and I don't know if the judge wants to address this. An opinion poll was taken in March on the eve of Prince Harry's visit to Jamaica when this issue was very alive and being discussed. And it came out about 50-50, people wanting to keep the monarchy and get rid of the monarchy. And those against, those who said no, those who wanted to keep the monarchy, those against abolishing it, cited as their reasons, first of all, the biggest reason, things will get worse. I'm not quite sure what that means. But certainly that's a sense of a fear of change, I expect, from that. Corruption amongst local politicians, that was one thing that they cited. The government not being ready to lead. In other words, it was not about positives, I think, when people were asked, well, why don't you want to get rid of the monarchy? It was about negatives. And I think the judge touched on that in his speech, which has a lot to do possibly with identity and with people not feeling a confidence in their own politicians. Those were the sentiments that came out in that opinion poll. There's a question.
If I could just add something to that. When you hear those responses, you understand the misinformation that exists as to why, or what, let me not say why, as to what Jamaica gets from the monarchy, and therefore why it is so important to have the public education program.
That makes sense.
This lady's had her hand up here.
My name is Hope Hannah. I'd like to ask the judge, given your passion for this subject and your persuasive arguments and the credibility internationally that you enjoy, when will you be leaving The Hague and your present job to go home in order to spearhead this push towards the kind of situation what you have so eloquently?
I thought you went in order to run for presidency.
That would be my next thing. But seriously, because everyone knows that people trust you and you are above the fray, and I think if you did go home and educate people about this issue, we would stand a much better chance of achieving that aim.
Thank you for the personal endorsement. I think you must be a bowler, because that's like a googly, or what they now call a doosa. I, of course, am very, very committed to Jamaica. I'm very much a nationalist. I have been away from Jamaica now for about 14 years. And I go back to Jamaica very frequently, at least 6 times a year. It doesn't answer the question that you ask, but I remember that I'm fairly advanced in years now. You might say I don't look it. And it may be that we have to leave it to some of the younger ones to do that job. But I'll be back in Jamaica perhaps in 2014 when my tenure of office comes to an end. And I recognize the importance of the question that you've raised and the need for leadership. But it's not only up to me alone, of course. Whatever I can do to contribute to the public education program, which is so important, I definitely will.
Because I think it's probably, even though we were severely interrupted there, maybe time to move on to refreshments and networking. Debbie, did you have questions?
Yes, Debbie Ransom, Caribbean Intelligence, formerly of BBC Caribbean. Given the examples already across the Caribbean, the presidency has sort of ticked along quite nicely, Trinidad, Dominica, as long as academics, former judges like yourself, have taken up the post. Though there had been a blip in Trinidad at one stage, which had been based on the electing of a former prime minister as the president, and it almost became, as you know, the clash, as you probably know, the clash of 2 prime ministers, one being the president, one being the prime minister. How important do you think it is in framing up the rules of the game for Jamaica that maybe the presidential post is ring-fenced from politics?
Well, I would say it's absolutely important that we have a very, very clearly defined procedures for the presidency. And I mean, I can't say now what those procedures would be, but I certainly agree with you that there is a clear need for procedures which will ensure that the person who is elected is the best person for the job and is a person who would not be subject to political influence.
Take one over here. There's somebody over there, no?
There's over here.
There's a lady here.
Hello. Just a quick question. For Jamaicans in the UK, would you have an opinion on what, if anything, we could do to engage in the process?
I think I overheard, I heard a somewhat cynical comment, send money. No, but I think you Jamaicans here can play a very important role in this entire question. There is the public education program. And I think there are many ways in which you can support the political discourse that will be taking place in Jamaica. You would have had the experience of living in a monarchical system and perhaps could speak to its advantages or disadvantages more persuasively than those of us in Jamaica who are far removed from it. You know? But, so I can't precisely identify the ways in which you could help, but I'm pretty sure that there is a role for the diaspora in this matter.
We'll take one more from that lady there.
What I'd like to know is that if the move to Republicanism is defeated by a referendum, would you still seek to remove the Privy Council? And how will you ensure the judiciary remains independent?
Yes, the two issues are related, but you can, of course, replace the Privy Council and still have the monarchical system. That's not, the two things are not constitutionally linked. There's no legal requirement that the one must coexist with the other. You know? So that's perfectly feasible. I would still, in any event, support replacing the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Justice. And let me just add a little to that. You know? We need in Jamaica to develop our own institutions and to respect them. As I said, we have, in a sense, been let down in the way some of our institutions have been managed and have been run, and that has led to a loss of confidence. But in my view, and again, as I said, by far the most potent explanation for the lack of confidence that we have in each other and in our institutions is the 307-year colonial experience, which has taught us not to trust each other. And particularly when you have something as an alternative, which is foreign and which is white, we have been taught to believe that that something is better, you know? And that is what we need. That is what we need to deal with in Jamaica. It will take us some time. You know? It will take us some time because 307 years is a very long time. We have only been independent 50 years. You know? And when people criticize Jamaica, criticize the governments to say that the governments have not done enough, and they say bad and awful things about the government. Yes, the governments are not perfect, but in my view, we have achieved progress since independence. Independence has been meaningful. Yes, we could have made more of it. But look at other countries. You look at the United Kingdom itself. How long has the United Kingdom been running its own affairs? Can anyone tell me, the historians? It's over probably from William the Conqueror, maybe 1,000 years, almost 1,000 years. We have only had 50 years. Why are we so hard on ourselves? We have only been at it. We have only just started. Give us a chance. Give us a chance to establish, to have our own court. The Caribbean Court can replace the Privy Council and can provide the same level of justice as the Privy Council did.
I think that's a very good note to end on. I know there are more questions. There might be a chance to talk to the judge as we have refreshments. Before we close, though, I'd just like to introduce the Deputy High Commissioner, Mrs. Joan Thomas Edwards, who'd like to say a few words at this stage. And thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Claire Balderson, Your Excellency Patrick Robinson, Judge Patrick Robinson, Your Excellency High Commissioner Asamba, distinguished guests. Thank you all for coming. It is I've forgotten, Diane Abbott, Shadow Minister for Health. Welcome.
And I'm sorry, oath of loyalty to the Queen. True confession.
I really want to thank you all for coming. I am very encouraged at the level of attendance, and participation. I was very pleased to see standing room only, and I just want to thank you for coming. This evening's topic has no doubt been rather stimulating. It's topical. It's also something that, as we have seen, it's something that we need a lot of education on. So this is one in the series of lectures or presentations that we'll be having from the High Commission to the community to let people be aware of the whole issue of republicanism. The lecture, Your Excellency, was rather stimulating, as I said before, and I drew about 3 or 4 lessons from it. I don't want to be controversial here, but I learned, one, how Jamaicanly I am, because I am, and many of us in the room can identify with the spirit of Jamaica, which is one of defying the odds without fear, with style and aplomb. I haven't got the full definition as you said it, but I drew from that as a people we are resilient and we have a lot to be thankful for. We have achieved a lot, and internationally we are seen as world leaders. The lesson I've learned, we need to be proud of ourselves as Jamaicans. We should stop putting ourselves down, stop the self-deprecation, because we stand tall in the eyes of the world. Have confidence in ourselves also, and in our ability to rule. And what I just learned today, that when you have many Jamaicans in a room, the warmth among us is so great that it will set off an alarm. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to continue to thank a few people who have really made this event possible. First of all, I've already thanked Judge Robinson, but I want to thank the University of London for agreeing to partner with us. I thank Mr. Jeffrey Crossick, the Vice Chancellor of the University of London, for agreeing to give us the venue free of cost and to really accommodate us. They've bent over backwards to do a lot for us, and we really thank them for really celebrating Jamaica 50 with us. There are 4 other ladies who helped me to plan this conference, or 5 ladies rather, who helped me to plan this conference, and I'll mention their names. They are Mrs. Denise Milani, Mrs. Hilary Carty, Mrs. Althea Evans-Shuley, Mrs. Winsome Cornish, and our chair of the Jamaica 50, Mr. Joe Montgomery, who's at the back, Dr. Linda Hay, Mrs. Olga Jimenez, and Mrs. Debbie Ransom. I just want to give special thank you to them for making this a reality. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, GV Media and the Gleaner, the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, VP Records, who came on at the last minute, and Grace Foods. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for coming. But before I leave, I just wanted to mention that Jamaica 50, as you're already aware, is a year-long celebration of events here in the UK. Several have gone before, but we have 3 major events that are coming up that you must put in your diary. The next one is July 8th, and that's a cricket match at the Kennington Oval on the 8th of July, Sunday the 8th of July at 1 o'clock. The Jamaican legends versus the British legends. I believe we have some brochures there, Mr. Donner. If you have brochures here, we can hand out to people. Then there's a National Church Service, which is on the 21st of July at the Westminster Central Hall at 11 a.m. the 21st of July, Saturday the 21st of July. And our flagship event is at the O2 from the 3rd to the 12th of August. Those dates, of course, coincide with the Olympics. The Jamaica House is an opportunity for us as Jamaicans and non-Jamaicans, because all of you here now are Jamaicans, as His Excellency has told us. We want to invite you and your friends, everybody, to come to Jamaica House during those dates. Many won't have tickets. I won't have a ticket. I don't have a ticket. At High Commission, you don't have a ticket to go and see the Olympics either. So we will create the spirit. We'll create the spirit of Jamaica at the O2. So we'll congregate and have a great time at the O2 watching the Olympics. On the 6th of August, we will also have a flag-raising event, reenacting what happened in 1962. You have to come early, it's going to be in the morning, but we'll send out details on that one. So the 3 events to watch: the cricket, the church service, and the O2. I hope to see you there. And I now hand over to High Commissioner Asamba, who will do a special presentation to His Excellency Patrick Robinson.
It really is our great pleasure to have had Justice Patrick Robinson with us this evening. And we would have had more discussion if the warmth of our company did not cause the fire alarm to go off. And he was enjoying it so much that he could go on all night. But I think we have limited time in this room. But sir, on behalf of all of us who are here present, on behalf of the High Commission, this is just a small token. And I know you're going to enjoy it. Because we've had word privately about the things that he likes. And so I just want to hand you this and to say that we know you've been out of Jamaica for 14 years. We know you come home very often. But just in case, in between those little times, you can just listen to those things. And it will remind you. Can I just say one other thing about the O2, if you don't mind? It's going to be open from 4 o'clock until 12 p.m. 4 p.m. and it is free. You just have to buy your drinks and your liquor inside. And there are going to be big screens. And the O2 can hold 1,000 people, so come early.
Thank you very much. Just to say thank you very much, High Commissioner. I thoroughly enjoyed the afternoon's discussion. I won't inquire how you discovered those private matters about me. But thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with you during drinks. And may I acknowledge the presence of Member of Parliament Diane Abbott. I'm sorry that I did not see when you arrived, but we're very, very pleased to see you here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your patience earlier on and for coming back in. I think you'll all agree it was well worth us sitting down again with Judge Robinson. And our thanks to the Judge, to the High Commissioner, the Deputy High Commissioner. And now comes the most important bit of any Jamaican gathering, I think, which is the party. So please do help yourselves to drinks and talk amongst yourselves.
And a very big thank you to Claire Balderson, who is our former BBC correspondent, who has acted as